Okay, welcome back. Probably going to slip into a lot of these tutorials. They're not really that important to anyone, I don't think, except myself. And they really are, I think, staying as basic as I can in reading and literally just translating, I guess, thoughtfully the content of the phenomenon of man into a little bit of kind of fun rhino grasshopper scripts. And I do this for the beginners to push creativity and push philosophy and push kind of art and math within that environment. Don't worry so much about the outcome. This is hardly important, this thing that's created here. And it's a bit of a mess, and afterwards I did a nice Boolean union, but its generation of this form, which you can see all of its surfaces, it actually is a watertight. It's got some wild finishes. I mean, just to think of this in wireframe, I don't even know what it would look like. If I could go there, I have to leave this zebra, which I've got tucked in here. Yeah, the wireframe's pretty slick. It's pretty easy. Anybody could generate it via different algorithms, but I'll show you why I generated it. So going into chapter 1, the stuff of the universe, I was inspired by to push anything back into the past is equivalent to reducing it to its simplest elements. And I was thinking of that, well, let's create a point and push it back into number. I mean, I can't really go too much simpler than that type of variable number, be it a float or a decimal. I guess I could either have it be or not be as a Boolean, and I guess I could name it anything I want as a string, but that's what I'm thinking, is trace as far back as possible. So even when you start with a point, it's more complex to go back the other way, and of course drive that by whatever data is infinite as you want to generate those points. Like I said, there's a very philosophical connection between what that means to somebody scripting and what's driving that by number, not by thing. Point being an infinitesimally small and galactically or cosmo. I like this term cosmogenesis that comes from this text. It's quite beautiful as it's ongoing. Cosmos continues and continues to grow, and we as a phenomenon of man have to experience it and delineate things and understand things more. So trace as far back as possible in the direction of their origins. And this is where Pierre Desjardins talks about being a naturalist, not a physicist. The last fibers of the human aggregate are lost to view and are merged in lines with the very stuff of the universe. So, even though a point, I try and teach everybody that a point is at least a plane, so it has an orientation. You just don't recognize it when only seeing the point. And of course, you can extend that into a sphere of any dimension you want and any amount of unity or variety within it. So that's just where I went. Pretty simple script, not too much. Now this one I had a little more fun with. I enjoyed this. This is chapter 1, elemental matter. So observable from this special angle and considered at the outset in its elemental state, by which I mean at any moment, at any point, in any volume. So I thought I'd deal with points. The stuff is tangible things reveals itself with increasingly insistence as radical particulate, yet essentially related, and lastly, prodigiously active. Now, another way of saying that is he was saying that smallness and plurality and immobility was something we need to avoid in our life and in comprehending the universe. So obviously, I was thinking about plurality, unity, and energy, and I thought, how would I script that? Well, I would script that pretty simply. As a unit here, I would grab any bit of data and record the amount of that data as a list length. Pretty simple. I love this little script. I would set my data recorder to something reasonable, maybe 100 counts, so it would stop, so it wouldn't just keep going. The trigger will keep going. And I ran it every 20 milliseconds because I'm impatient, I guess, in this universe at 50 years old. I did a little multiplication through sine, just because I like sine. It's not really necessary because it's just a digit. And I should probably have it undulate and grow and shrink and do all these things, which it can do as you let it continue. But I just did a little division through multiplication, and that list length I multiplied to the radius of the sphere. And at that point, I just started with a circle. I said, well, let's just divide it into a count. So I divided it into 100 counts. So let's grab a list item and bake that as we go. So we don't need to set it to true to bake. Let's set it to false to bake. And we'll get a little object in here. And as we run this little script, it's kind of fun. You'll see that there it is, or at least I think it is 20 milliseconds. I should turn it on. There it goes. It's a growing universe with an ever-expanding kind of, well, only 100 count unit that I have to wonder what I'm grabbing as data, which is nice to look at driving geometries first because of it. I just want to see what happens with this data as it goes. 0.06. I'll stop it and I'll start it again. So it's continuing just to grow. There's not really this. I'm going to put my list length up to 1,000. Let's see where we go. Upwards and onwards, and slowly grows less and less and less. I guess the sign isn't really even necessary. But there it is. Now it's coming back down again proportionately. So it's trying to shrink. It just shrinks at a lower rate. I think that's kind of a nice expanding and then contracting kind of symbol of a universe to 1,000 count. But I need to hit stop and pause that out. I'll probably set my limit for an object that's reasonable in size that can do a Boolean union afterwards, because in time I always like to create something. And I think we'll bake it as we go, which is kind of nice. So we'll jump in here. It'll be a very similar object, but you'll see the making of it. To reset and to play it, there it goes. It's baking itself 100 turns as it comes out and wants to be bigger, and then it would dive down. And I can put that in shaded mode, and you can see what we have. I need to stop this timer, even though this is stopped recording. And at that point, I'll just kill my script. I'll package that script into here with a group, and I'll package this very simple script into this content. And I will continue reading and thinking and building geometries, because that's what I can afford the time to do right now. You can see this form is pretty complex with a lot of objects, and you'd have to slow down with a Boolean union, which would take some time, because it's trying to do an awful lot in these small circles with radii. And try and think about keeping your models to point and line and very simple forms. It would have been nice to do this possibly as a mesh, which would have sped it up a lot, and I could have continued it. I could have had it spiral up into a helix expanding. But whatever data visualization you want to do, it's nice to bring in this element of time with it. And also consider that through this type of philosophy, you're able to be part of something. And I guess I'm being drawn to it a little bit because of the ideas of augmented reality and virtual reality, and man adjusting their eyes to something more than what they were used to seeing. So we can move to a higher view possibly on the universe, sense more. And as I read this book, it's going to be pretty exciting. Now, I don't know if I'll wait around. There it is. The mesh is done. It's a nice tight form. It's not too complex now. The good old, I love the what command. I just think it's amazing. It's a closed poly surface with 118 surfaces. And that's it. And it looks good to go. And I'll play around a little bit. It's not going to be too exciting. And I'm not really getting into my curvature analysis yet, which is what I'm going to do. I'm going to try and think about surfaces generated by the next section of curve and surface continuity, and deal with that which is not continuous all the way through continuity up to G2, I think. So we're making a little comparison. There'll be a little study here of G positional continuity, tangents continuity, and curvature continuity, and hopefully I can draw out some more interesting geometries than this one. And just before we go, I did want to do a little surface curvature analysis, and you can see it's not terrible to figure out. It's a little bright in color, but it's had pretty interesting play. I don't know, I'm going to look underneath it. Nothing really on there. And one thing I like to do is zoom. It works even in Grasshopper now. I don't know if it did before, but a sense of being able to use the rhino tools on the ghost and geometries in grasshopper, but it seems to work now. I guess I was having trouble before. Anyway, I'll continue. I'm excited to go on to plurality and break that down to what it means. But like I said, I'll be jumping back and forth over to the Rhino Certification 2 level to try and understand surfaces and curves a little deeper. Thanks for watching.